Well, here's the thing. Like, this is the thing. If you actually really look at how those bubbles work, Bitcoin is the precise anti-bubble technology. In that, whether it is the South Sea bubble, or the tulips, or housing bubbles, or stock market bubbles, or anything, ultimately, what is happening is that people use those things as a store of value because their money is crappy. Their money is being inflated, so they choose to escape that by buying this thing. And then because everybody is dumping their money for this thing goes up, and then more and more people enter into it, and then it goes up more and more and more. But then what happens? Then supply catches up. Whether it's houses, whether it's tulips, whether it's land in Louisiana, or whatever it is, people find more of the thing that is being monetized, and they bring it onto the market, and they bring the price crashing down.
So what Sheikh Saif is doing here is that he is trying to address the price topic, and or the bubble argument, I should say, by demonstrating that Bitcoin is actually the opposite, or the way Bitcoin works, it actually deflates bubbles, you could say. I mean, because no one can say or suggest that Bitcoin doesn't have moments of price volatility that has a price point which is higher than, I guess, the long-term average. That's the best way to put it. Higher than long-term average. So if you look at the long-term average of Bitcoin, there are times when the price goes way higher than the long-term average. And at some point, it comes back to the long-term moving average. Those who know what moving averages are, yeah, you understand. And if you want to call that a bubble, possibly. But what Sheikh is trying to allude to here is a killer feature of Bitcoin, and that is the difficulty adjustment. Meaning that, as you described earlier on, if the price of gold goes way higher, as Sheikh Tarek earlier on, if the price of gold goes way higher than production, then that will cause many people to rush in to capitalize on this spread, and that will flood the market with more gold, and then bring the price of gold back in line with production. I mean, bubbles, that tends to be an exaggeration of that, where the price got, like, make example, the tulip. How much does it cost to have a tulip? Like, I don't know, a couple of quid. But the price now goes high, more than the house. That will mean that every tulip farmer was going to basically say, what the heck? I'm sitting on a gold mine. It's going to flood the whole market, all these tulips, and way a lot more tulips more. And that flooded the market of all that supply to capitalize on that bubble will bring the price crashing back down to production cost. That's the reason why, that's basically how markets work anyway. Markets work through spread. So if there's something called arbitrage, if you don't know what it means. Arbitrage basically means that if some place has it cheaper than another place, people will capitalize on the spread. That's essentially what, I mean, we see it in the Quran, رحلة الشتاء والصيف. So Quraysh had the journey in the summertime and the wintertime, that they would go to Palestine in the summertime and go to Yemen in the wintertime, and they'll basically take the spread, take product from one place and sell it over another place at profit, and products from one place and sell it to the other place at profit. Basically means in one place it's cheaper, so I could take it to another place and sell it at a profit and capitalize on the spread. So in markets, when you have bubbles, when the spread becomes so large, that will cause a massive flow of product into the market, which will cause the price to come right back down to production and equalize, reach that equilibrium. Bitcoin does the opposite. It doesn't matter how much the price goes up, the flow of Bitcoin in the market remains the same. So it actually doesn't have this kind of bubbly mentality. And what you actually find is that Bitcoin's price action strongly correlates towards the flow of Bitcoin into the market and the adoption of Bitcoin to the masses. The more people adopt Bitcoin to use, the more the price reflects exactly that. Anyway, that's what he's mentioned is a very good point.
So gold resists that.
Or, sorry,
because,
just to interrupt very briefly, and to tie it to Islamic economics and finance as well, another reason that can happen, or an additional reason at the same time, is because they were doing it on leverage that then defaults.
Yeah. Exactly, that's why leverage is haram. And
but do you think some people are buying Bitcoin on leverage?
Of course, a lot of people are.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So So as Alan Farrington, who's in the discussion as well, as he brought another scenario of how this bubble thing can happen. So we just mentioned about the price of something going really high, and then a lot of demand comes in the market, and that brings things back into line and causes a drop back into production. One of the reasons why the price can be bid up so high in the first place is due to artificial demand. Demand that isn't real and is artificial. And once that the carpet has been pulled, or the rug has been pulled from that artificial demand, it now collapses back down to the market value. How would you get artificial demand? Leverage. I only have £10 to spend in the market. Abdullah only has £50 to spend in the market. Chantal only has £1 to spend in the market. But we all have an account in some derivatives account, and they give us 100x. So now Chantal with £1 now has £100. Me, my £10, I now have £10,000. Abdullah with £100 now has £10,000. We all now have way more money to spend than we previously did. And we do. We spend all that money in the market. And that causes the price to go up even more than it would. So if that £1, my £10, his £100, that's £111. If we bought that, maybe we move the price of whatever it is 1%. But if you have 100x, we can now move it 10%. And that 10% move that we've got because we just use leverage, that 9% extra is fake. It's not real. It's leverage. I am not actually spending that with my money. I'm spending that with borrowed money. And that borrowed money has to be paid back. So if we are able to move the price up 10%, and then others dive in to also capitalize on this move, and they also buy in, probably on leverage, goes at another 10, 20%, I now can sell my position at a profit because I've got 100x, I'm killing it, and I dump all my Bitcoin in the market, bringing it back down to price. So leverage is not real interest. It's not real demand. It's artificial demand. Same reason why house prices go up, because you have mortgages. That gives artificial demand. I'm actually buying a house with money that I don't have, that I couldn't buy if I didn't have a mortgage. So therefore, I am now a buyer in the market when I shouldn't really be a buyer in the market. There's demand in the market when there shouldn't be demand in the market. That pushes the price up higher. So what he's saying here is that leverage can also facilitate and lead to bubbles, because it leads to prices moving up way higher than it needs to be. And even Shaykh Tarek says, and it happens in Bitcoin, almost like a little jab, a little bit of a jab. And say for this year, we have in Bitcoin as well. And this is why Bitcoin riba is haram. It does another one of the byproducts, the evil byproducts of riba, is that it gives artificial demand. You are able to borrow money you don't have. You have to spend in the market that you shouldn't be spending, and that bids up the prices of what you're buying more than it should. But is that to do with Bitcoin? No. That Bitcoin is the antidote. And in fact, Bitcoin is opposite to riba, because you can't maintain a riba system with a hard money currency. But anyway, moving on. Let's move on.
So this is I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. But
so South Sea Bubble, Mississippi, it's the money system is causing them to do that.
Exactly. And Bitcoin is different in this regard because there's no way of making more of it. And this is the key thing, which is the difficulty adjustment, which means that Bitcoin has a supply production schedule. Currently, we're making around 900 Bitcoins a day.
Yes.
And Bitcoin is abided by the schedule regardless of how many people are using it. So whether it's 8 people using Bitcoin all over the world or 8 billion people using Bitcoin all over the world, we're only making 900 tomorrow. There's no mechanism for bringing a large supply of Bitcoin onto the market that brings the price crashing down. So it's the South Sea bubble that is prevented from ever popping. That's the problem with all of these bubbles, is that they were monetizing things that were inflationary, that can be increased in their supply, that don't have a very high cost of production. The cost of production doesn't keep up with the increased monetary demand. So the monetary demand increases the price for land in Louisiana or houses or tulips or whatever it is. It goes up a lot, but then the production catches up. The market price goes up, the cost of production is low, producers just make more until they bring the two together. And so that destroys anybody who saves in it. Bitcoin resists this because the producers can't make more.
Yeah, so that's basically what he's saying, is that due to the difficulty adjustment, if the price of Bitcoin goes up way more miners come into the market, they try to capitalize on that spread, and that therefore makes it more difficult to mine, and therefore the supply is brought back in line with the increased amount of mining. Now, what I would say though, and I say this to all Bitcoiners, Muslim and non-Muslim, leverage, interest will harm this market. And unfortunately, there are many Bitcoiners who are promoting staking your Bitcoin, not selling your Bitcoin, leveraging your Bitcoin. All these things will actually harm the market more than they anticipate. And how can it not? Riba has destroyed everything else around it. Why would Bitcoin be immune? So one example, and I'll just use that one example and move on. Miners now, for the last year and a bit, because they know and expect Bitcoin to go up higher, they've been holding onto their Bitcoin. And some of them have been taking out loans on their Bitcoin. And what that means is that when it comes due to pay your loans, you'll be forced to pay. You'll be forced to sell. Maybe at a price point you don't want to. Maybe at a price point you shouldn't pay. You don't want to pay, and that actually gives you more sell pressure. People will be forced to sell when you don't want to sell. So, and that's something which is known in the market. It's known in the market that leverage has brought a lot of volatility into the Bitcoin market, probably more than it needs to be. So yeah, there's a good point from Shaykh Saif. Slipping in the difficulty adjustment, slipping it in.